Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on test anxiety. I'm Sonia Waddell. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I own Dove Counseling Center located in Marietta, near Marietta Square, downtown Marietta. I specialize in anxiety disorders, phobias, and trauma. I want to take a minute and define what trauma is. Trauma is when an event or events have happened in someone's life and they have disabled someone's ability to cope. So it affects them mentally, physically, and socially. Some people it affects them spiritually because they feel like, why did God allow this to happen to me? And that may strain their relationship with God or the higher power, higher being that they recognize. So it can also affect someone spiritually as well as physically, mentally, and emotionally. Okay. Just a little bit about me. I started off working in the child advocacy world with kids who have been sexually abused and working with their caregivers. And I provided individual, family, and group therapy. Then I went on and worked in the school system in elementary, middle, and high schools, and I provided therapy through a grant. And now I'm in private practice where I began seeing clients at age 12 and up, and I have been providing therapy for nearly 10 years. Who is this webinar for? Who can benefit? Students of all ages. We now have senior citizens going back to school, working moms, parents and caregivers, school counselors, teachers, social workers, and tutors. That is who can benefit from this webinar today. So just wanted to give an outline of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the difference between anxiety and stress because people get those mixed up and think they're the same thing, but they are indeed different. I'm going to talk about how does anxiety begin, those two pathways, which is very important. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of anxiety. Some of the symptoms of anxiety are the same as stress, so that's why people get them confused. I'm going to give you some skills that you can use to help you as you take your test so you can be successful. You may be wondering, do I need therapy? Does my child need therapy? We may both need therapy. So we'll talk about that as well. So anxiety is when someone has excessive fear or worry about the future or near future. Near future could be in 2 days. And the thoughts are intrusive. They are constant. Seems like they just can't get rid of them, one thought after another. Stress is when someone has a feeling of pressure or strain about something that is happening in the present. So I'm going to give you two examples of both of them so you can get a clearer picture of stress and anxiety. So stress is when, for example, a student goes to class and his teacher comes in and says, hey, I need everyone to get out a pencil. We're going to have a pop quiz. This student begins to sweat and he thinks to himself, oh my goodness, I have not studied. I don't know what I'm going to do. He is stressed in that moment because it's happening right then. And he may have some physical sensation. He may have some thoughts, oh my goodness, I want to flunk this test, this quiz. I just don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even have a pencil. Okay, so the sweat starts under his armpits, on his forehead it begins to sweat, his leg may begin to shake. Okay, so that's going on right then. Anxiety, this excessive fear or worry and intrusive thoughts. So Joe is at work and his boss comes to me and say, hey, I need you to give the presentation in 2 weeks instead of your coworker. There's no problem. He gets up from his seat. He walks to the bathroom. As he's walking, he's thinking, oh my goodness, I'm terrified of public speaking. I just know it. I'm going to get up there. I'm going to fall. I'm going to freeze. I'm not going to be able to speak. My boss is going to be so mad at me that I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to have a hard time finding a job. I am going to lose our house, and my wife is going to leave me. His heart starts beating fast. He starts hyperventilating. He begins shaking. His feet go numb, and he has a full-blown panic attack. Now, the presentation is in 2 weeks. It is not happening now. So I hope you can see the difference. Stress is what is going on right then, and someone could have some thoughts about what is going on, and their body reacts because of the situation that is happening presently. Anxiety is about the future. It hasn't happened yet, but because the mind is so strong, you can think your way into anxiety, to being fearful about something that is not happening right now. That is how powerful the mind is. Okay, so I hope you understand the difference between the two. Testophobia is abnormal and persistent fear of exams caused by a negative experience. So someone could dread a test but not have testophobia. Let's say they are working on their GED, or they're taking the LSAT to get into law school, or they're taking a GRE to get into grad school. When they take tests, they don't have a problem. They do good, but this is a major test that they're struggling with, so they may have some anxiety about that. That's different from every time I get ready to take a test, I get sick, I throw up, I get hot, I just can't do it. Or I sit down to take the test and I can't remember any of the material, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. That's testophobia. So there's a difference between a major test and feeling a little anxious, as opposed to every time you sit down and take a test, a pop quiz, an exam, there is this intense fear that you have. Stress and anxiety both affect the body and the mind and have some symptoms in common. So that's why people get them confused, okay? Anxiety can manifest in two ways. One pathway, that's to the right, are through thoughts. The other path to the left is through associations, and I'm going to explain that. For the thoughts, we can use Joe, for example, the guy who was afraid of public speaking. He went from, oh my goodness, I'm terrified of public speaking, I'm gonna get up there, I'm gonna fall, my mind is gonna go blank, I'm gonna get fired, I'm not gonna be able to pay my bills, my wife is gonna leave me. And he had a panic attack. So that's one pathway of how anxiety begins, is intrusive thoughts. The other pathway is through associations. So for example, 5 years ago, this lady got robbed, and the guy that robbed her was wearing Old Spice cologne, and he had on a Falcons t-shirt, okay? So yesterday, she was in Target, and she was looking for some makeup, you know, trying to find this good lipstick and this pretty fingernail polish for the summer, and she was so focused on that, this guy walked behind her. She did not see him. She did not turn her head. And she smelled the Old Spice cologne, and she froze. Whatever was in her hand dropped. That's because there's a part of her mind that has associated the Old Spice and said, this is dangerous. It was dangerous 5 years ago when she was getting robbed. And even though that incident has already happened, there's a part of her mind that thinks it's still happening now because she smelled the Old Spice. That's an association. Associations come through the senses, what someone sees, smells, tastes, touches, feels. They also come through weather conditions, okay? So there's a small part of her mind about the size of an almond that said, hey, this smell is the same smell you had 5 years ago, and that was dangerous. And even though she's in Target and no one is bothering her, it sends a message to that part of the mind that she's in danger again. So that's why she drops everything, okay? So anxiety can manifest in two ways. To the right, thoughts. To the left, that pathway is associations. Someone can have both going on as well. Okay, so just wanted you to know where it comes from, because the research shows that if a client understands what is going on with them, that they accelerate in therapy, even though you all are not in therapy, but I just want to put that out there. So let's talk about the symptoms that people have. I broke them down into 3 categories. Physically, people may sweat, have an increased heart rate, tingling or numbness in the arms, fingers, or face, increased body temperature, dizziness, lightheadedness, dry mouth, nausea, shortness of breath. Visually, break into highs or red blotches, pink dark flush of the face or chest, increased blinking. Internally, racing thoughts, we talked about that, feeling of panic. So people who are claustrophobic have a feeling of panic, which is in the anxiety family. Tightness in chest or stomach, digestive issues such as increased need to vomit, headache, inability to move or react, that's the lady at Target, she could not move, memory loss. Memory loss is important because they study all day and all night. They sit down in front of that exam and their mind goes blank. This is an internal symptom of anxiety. Anxiety can lead to depression. They're like cousins because that person feels helpless, hopeless, that they're going to be this way forever. They don't know how to change this, and so that can lead into depression. But there is hope, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Now let me explain what's going on with the mind. I do a lot of mind education with my clients so that they can accelerate in therapy. Some people come and they think, I'm going crazy, something's wrong with me, which is totally not true. Anybody that is dealing with anxiety, your mind works fine. There is a tiny portion of your mind known as the amygdala, that is the shape of the almond, that hasn't been working in your best interest, okay? If that pathway is through associations, then it's the amygdala. If it's the thoughts, then that pathway is the prefrontal lobe cortex, which is right behind your forehead. That's causing the thoughts. The body sensation, all of that is the amygdala, okay? All right, so let's talk about the mind. I'm going to use the metaphor of an iceberg and the Titanic. With the Titanic, there was a part of the iceberg they could see, even though they saw it too late, but that part is, we're going to use the metaphor as the intellectual mind, what you can see, what you are aware of. That part of the mind is rational and positive. It focus is on finding the solution. How can I solve this problem? The intellectual mind does not dwell on problems. It focus is on what we want. Here's a kicker. Too much stress causes us to go into the primitive mind or the emotional mind. So someone can start off being stressed about a situation, and too much stress causes anxiety. So again, some of the symptoms may be the same. Okay, so let's talk about this emotional mind or primitive mind or subconscious mind. It's multiple names. This is part of the iceberg that is underneath the water that they could not see on the Titanic. It is hidden, okay? It houses the fight, flight, or freeze response, which is a trauma response, okay? And I brought up trauma, I defined it earlier, I'm going to define it again, because when people have experienced trauma, a lot of times anxiety is right behind it, okay? So again, trauma is when an event or events happen in someone's life that disabled their ability to cope. It affects them emotionally, mentally, physically, and sometimes spiritually. So an example of that is someone got in a car accident, and it was a pretty bad accident. They almost died, and they feel they can no longer drive anymore. They don't want to get in a car. They don't want to drive it. They don't want to be a passenger. They don't want to have anything to do with a vehicle, and they ride their bike or they take the train or the bus. They feel they can't do it, so they're not able to cope in that manner. So that's trauma. And the three responses trauma has is fight, flight, run. So that person's running away from driving at all. So not literally running. Or freeze. So the lady in Target, she froze. She dropped everything. It was just frozen. So that's trauma response. The emotional mind's function is to ensure survival. It tries to get you to survive any means necessary. So for this lady, she just froze. That was her means of survival. Emotional mind is negative and it obsesses. Anytime someone is obsessing or is always negative, you know somebody that's always negative, they are in their emotional mind most of the time. Emotional mind stores a template of how we survive in dangerous situations before and refers back to them and says, hey, you need to respond the same way. So just like the lady froze 5 years ago, her emotional mind is trying to protect her from smelling this old spice and tells her to freeze again. Automatically, she doesn't even think about it. She sniffs it and she automatically freezes, just like that. Focuses on the worst case scenario. Focuses on what we don't want. Because what we do want is to be anxiety free, but instead of focusing on how can I do that, focusing on the worst case. Emotional mind thinks we are in danger, just like the lady at Target thought she was in danger, responding to anger, depression, or anxiety. And then the emotional mind goes on autopilot. Things are mindless, mindless overeating, mindless angry outbursts, mindless nail biting. Anytime someone is doing an action and it's mindless, they're in their emotional mind. Okay? The intellectual and emotional mind is like a child-parent relationship. And what I mean by that is this 7-year-old wanted to get a cookie, and mom was in the kitchen cooking dinner. So he says, Mom, can I have a cookie? She says, no, wait till after dinner. How about you go outside and play? So mom is in her intellectual mind. She's focused on the solution. She's positive. She's not dwelling on what he wants. He wants a cookie. She's not dwelling on it. She set a limit, told him what to do. He comes back in. He throws a tantrum. Mom ignores him. She's in her intellectual mind. She's totally ignoring it, focusing on what she wants. What she wants is to finish cooking dinner, okay? So mom says, go outside, comes back in, tantrum is even worse. Okay, mom is on the phone trying to have a conversation, and then she says, go ahead, get the cookie. She has just flipped over to her emotional mind, okay? So as the little 7-year-old reaches to get the cookie, mom says, you know what, I changed my mind. Put that cookie down and go outside and do not come back in until I call for you. So she stayed in her intellectual mind most of the time. She was stressed with the first tantrum. The second tantrum, she's on the phone, and the tantrum is worse. And so then she says, go ahead and have the cookie. And she flipped to her emotional mind, and then she thought about it, and she says, nah, don't get the cookie, and she flipped back to her intellectual mind. Are we in our intellectual mind 24/7? No. But when you notice you're in your emotional mind, you have the power to flip back like a light switch. So that's the power that you have over your mind. Even though the mind is powerful, you have power over it. So here I'm going to teach you some techniques that you can use so you can be successful in sitting down, taking your pop quiz, your test, or your exam. Okay. The first thing I want to teach you is stop stopping. It sounds easy. And when you are aware that you're being negative, you must stop that thought immediately. Flip that switch from your emotional mind and go back to your intellectual mind. So remember the student that sat down and took a test, and he says, oh my goodness, I am about to fail this. He needs to stop that thought and think positive. Well, you know what? Okay, first let me borrow a pencil. Okay, he borrows a pencil. You know what? I'm a pretty good auditory learner, meaning he learns by listening. So I'm just going to do my best. And you know what? He did say, the professor did say that he'll throw out a lowest quiz. So if I don't do good, it's okay. He'll throw it out and I'll do better on the other quizzes. That's thought stopping. Stopping that negative thought and thinking positive. Because if you picture a triangle, to the left of the triangle is the word thought, to the right is the word feeling, and below the word behavior, TFB. Whatever you think will cause a feeling, and that feeling will lead to a behavior. So if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm gonna fail, the feeling you're gonna have is anxiety, and the behavior is you may give up, or you're gonna flunk before you just give up, just forget it, you know? So whatever you think does cause a feeling. They work together, thought, feeling, behavior. Okay, so that's technique number one. Technique number two is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is simply being in the present. For example, if you're driving in your car, you are paying attention to what is going on in that moment. So, for example, okay, I see red. Say this in front of me. To the right is Chick-fil-A. To the left is Dollar Tree. Oh, I didn't know Dollar Tree moved over there. Oh, and there is BP. Oh, I need to get some gas. Just in the moment. You're not thinking about, oh, I need to wash clothes and I need to go to the cleaners. You're just in the moment, focusing on that. So let me teach you that. I want you to picture a bouquet of flowers, different colors. And I'm going to walk you through what mindfulness is. So notice the red rose, notice the pink carnation, notice the purple flower, notice their stems, notice how the water is filled to the top, notice that pretty blue face that is in. Okay, so that's mindfulness, just being in the present, focusing on the PowerPoint, focusing on my voice. That is mindfulness. Okay, so it's being in the present, being in the moment. Guided imagery is a little bit different than that. So I'm going to take you through a scenario of taking a test. Okay, so if you would close your eyes for me, take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Deep breath in again and slowly exhale. Deep breath in again and slowly exhale. I want you to picture yourself walking down the hall. Mind is relaxed, body is relaxed. As you're walking down the hall, you're taking some deep breaths, inhaling, exhaling. As you sit down at the desk, or as you sit down at your computer, you're taking deep breaths in, deep breaths out. You're getting to read the directions. You read question number one. There's a smile on your face because you know the answer. And you circle the answer, or you use your mouse and click the answer. Then you go on and you read question two. There's excitement, there's a smile on your face because you know the answer to that too. You proceed to number three. You read the question, not sure the answer, but you go through the process of elimination. You think it's C, and so you choose C. You go on to question four. After reading the question, you're not sure, so you circle it. You read question five. Not sure. Go through your process of elimination. You have it narrowed down to two of them. You reread the questions and you choose the best answer. And then you go to the next page or the next screen. Mind is relaxed. Body is relaxed. Now you may open your eyes. So that is a sample of guided imagery. What I did was I was talking to your emotional mind, and I was letting it know that when you sit down to take your test, you're going to be calm, your body is relaxed, and feeling confident about what you're doing. So for example, if your test is on a Friday and it's Monday, you need to practice this guided imagery exercise every day, especially the day of your test. This is letting your emotional mind know that there is no threat. See, anxiety comes because that part of the mind believes there's some danger, there's a threat when it really isn't. If there is a pit bull running behind you, that's a threat. And yes, there is some anxiety, but it's a test. You have studied, so your mind, if it is relaxed, your body will be relaxed. Your body takes its cues from the mind. So if the mind is in distress, your body can't rest, your body can't relax. So you're teaching your mind that there is no threat by using guided imagery, picturing yourself sitting down, getting your pen out, your pencil out, or sitting at the computer, reading the question. Even if you don't know the answer to number one, it's okay. I'll come back to it. And then you go on to number two. And so once your emotional mind understands, for 5 days you've been teaching it that there is no threat. When you sit down, there will be no anxiety. Okay? Next, if you are spiritual and you can get a scripture, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Or you may want to use a mantra that you have. You can use something simple as I can do it. So when that negative thought comes, you can stop that thought with your scriptures or with your mantra. Or you can use a positive affirmation. Come on, Mary, you know you got this. You can do this. You've been practicing. You got imagery. You're good. You studied. And so it's just important that you send a message to your emotional mind that there is no threat, so that when you sit down to take your test, your pop quiz, your exam, there won't be any forgetfulness. There won't be any memory loss of things that you have been studying, that you've been working so hard to do. Anxiety can be conquered. So I want you to be hopeful, I want you to be positive, and know that you can move forward. Okay, so I have this anxiety screening. If you go to this website and you can take this, it'll ask you a series of questions. If you score in the high area, you may want to seek out a professional. Okay? So healing is a matter of time, but it's sometimes also a matter of opportunity, Hippocrates. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the webinar on test anxiety. Again, I'm Sonia Woodell of Dove Counseling Center, bringing peace to your soul. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or to visit my website, dovecounselingcenter.com, and I will be happy to talk with you. I give free 10-minute consultations, and I would love to be able to help you with anxiety. Thank you again for tuning in. Have a great week, and you can conquer anxiety.